So Deputy Gannon, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to ask some direct questions individually if possible, and I'll be very quick.
Yeah.
Secretary General Hake, why were only 4 of the officials present asked to make a donation?
Well, for a couple of reasons. First of all, the Secretary General, who was asked to make a donation at 2,000, as the report outlines, was largely responsible. And so he was asked to do that. And the other 3 individuals were at management board level and therefore senior managers. And I took a decision that they had broad management responsibility for the failure that happened. I think the others, and again, that's directly related to the breach that occurred. I think the others staff, who were largely more junior, were in a situation where the then Secretary General asked them to come together, and I didn't think it would be proportionate to ask them to make a donation.
Thank you. I was also going to ask about how the donations were arrived at, but since Senator Ardagh already done that, did you discuss the donation with a former Secretary General Burgess before you made the recommendation? Did you say to him, when we're going to recommend £2,000, was that something that's discussed in advance of the recommendation being announced?
Yes, because working with our legal team in terms of natural justice, when you include findings or recommendations on individuals, you would share that extract with them. That included a particular sanction on them. I also thought that one of the first questions that we would be asked would be, had they agreed to make the donation? And so I felt it was better to include an answer to that in the review itself. So yes.
Okay. The report outlines that and I quote, the decision to attend Ivy House was discussed and agreed in video conferences with senior managers as part of the advanced planning. Why did the review not include details of what occurred during those advanced planning prior to June 17, 2020?
Yeah, I mean, I think well, there's 2 elements to that, you know, records 8, 28, 40, 37, 38, 39, 53, 57, which were all released as part of the Freedom of Information annex to the review, contains some elements of advanced planning and some of the efforts that were made to comply with social distance guidance. All of the meetings that we had said that the director of the team and the Deputy Secretary General at the time on a series of video conferences in the days leading up to it discussed coming in, who would come in, when they would come in. And I mean, that's touched on the review, but maybe we could have gone into it in more detail. Potentially.
And also, why wasn't the Safe and Working Group contacted before June 17 if a team of staff were due to be in Ivy House?
Yeah, we acknowledge that should have happened, although we say it was an administrative oversight. Because, keep in mind, the Safe Working Group had only been established on the 2nd, and in fact the first communication from it out to divisions was on the 16th, so literally the day before. So it had been established, but there wasn't a high level of awareness, and crucially the measures that were taken and were in place from a safe working arrangement would have been ones that the Safe Working Group would have recommended. So we felt, and I certainly felt, that it was more an administrative mistake than a serious error.
Okay. Secretary General, I'm going to admit that my eyebrow did raise a little bit when you said that the sparkling wine or the champagne was in the fridge for private occasions. What are the rules in relation to public servants drinking on campus, let's say, or in Ivy House? Yeah. Are there rules in advance? I would find it very strange if I walked into my office and some of my staff are sitting there drinking wine. What's the rules in relation?
So, like all departments, there is a code and policy on the misuse of drugs and alcohol across the civil service, and we comply with that. That doesn't include guidance or rules on the storage or consumption of alcohol on premises. So that's the same. You know, the same applies to all departments. It's certainly an area that we could look at, but it's not there. What I would stress is that there is no culture of widespread consumption of alcohol for personal use in the department. And that's just not my experience. And there's quite a different culture in place in the department. I mean, when I think about the culture in the Department of Foreign Affairs, what I think about are the people we have sitting in Kiev at the moment, waiting with Russians on the border, or people who face death threats in Ethiopia, or the people who helped with the consular case in Shanghai. There's been a lot of talk about culture in the department.
With the greatest degree of respect, Chair, we said we're going to stick to the date in question, and I understand the incredible work that's done, but I think it's unfair to, I don't think we would get the courtesy to do that. We don't doubt for a second. Incredible work being done. I didn't question whether there was a culture of drinking there, but you did invoke the imagery of champagne sitting in a fridge for a retirement party. So now I have to ask, given that it was limited to June 17th, are you aware of any other occasions during the period of lockdown where that champagne was removed from the fridge for a retirement party or any other occasions? And do you think that that's going to be an omission from the report that will, again, raise questions?
No, I'm not aware. I mean, as is in the, no, I'm not in terms of the specific question that you raised. As is already well known and is in the public domain, there was an official event on the 15th of July to mark the election to the Security Council that was held in full compliance with COVID guidance at the time. But that was an official event, and so the answer to your specific question is that I'm not aware. No.
Okay. Did former Secretary General Noel Burgess delete the tweet that he put out that evening of his own accord, or was he advised to do so? And if so, who advised him to delete the tweet?
Is that to me?
It's to either one of you, actually. To yourself, Minister, actually, probably more appropriately.
I mean, the honest answer to that question is that I don't know, but it certainly didn't come from an instruction from me or anybody in my team. But I mean, having looked at the tweet afterwards, because of the public interest obviously in it, it looks to me that that somebody raised this issue with him on social media and pointed out that that people were bunched tightly together, and he responded by saying, "Yeah, we let our guard down. It shouldn't have happened." And I think it was taken down after that. That's my understanding. But there was nobody leaning on him, as far as I'm aware, to take that down. But I presume he realised that a mistake had been made. He acknowledged it, took the photograph down. And as I said earlier, I think it's important to try to get some perspective into this, because we look at this now 19 months later, after 19 months of COVID, restrictions, sacrifice, the things that the Deputy Arda rightly outlined in terms of the struggles that many families have faced. And I can understand why people would look at this photograph and say, how did that happen? And be angered by that. But that night, all I can say is what happened in terms of my own involvement that night. It was mentioned to me, not as a major issue, but as a sort of a stupid mistake, if you like. It was acknowledged by the Secretary General, and the agenda moved on. When it was raised again 18 months later in the media, legitimately, and there was concern about it, obviously I had to respond to that, and that's why I asked the Secretary General to undertake the report. I know that Senator Crockwell said that he didn't think it was appropriate for a new Secretary General to be asked to do this report, but I think if you ask him, this was something that the Secretary General felt he had an obligation to take on, given the fact that this had happened in the department, and there was reputational damage associated with it, and we needed to address that collectively as a department, which is what we've tried to do in this report.
Okay, Deputy Gannon, final question?
No, that's fine, Chair.
That's it?
Yeah.